Two senior professionals look identical on LinkedIn this morning. Same degree, same title, same salary band, same years on the job. 18 months from now, one of them gets promoted into a bigger role and the other one gets restructured out. The difference between them is already visible and it is not what you think. It is a single file saved in a folder on one of their laptops that the other one is not writing. That file is what this video is about. By minute 6, you will see the number the Anthropic Economic Index just put on this, and it is larger than anything else AI coverage has reported in the last 2 years. Every senior professional has one Sunday night task, the term sheet review, the weekly status update, the margin sanity check. It takes 2 or 3 hours, it uses the same steps every time, and it repeats next Sunday exactly the same way. If you are a consultant, lawyer, product manager, analyst, or middle manager with 5 or more years on the job, you know the task I am describing and you know what it cost you. 18 months from now, that task will either still take 3 hours or it will take 90 seconds. The fork between those two futures is already open and the fork is not what you think. By the end of this video, you will see exactly what separates the professional whose role gets restructured from the one whose role scales into something larger, and you will have one file on your desktop that puts you on the second side. Start with what most senior professionals get wrong about this. Most senior professionals believe that using AI well means getting better at typing prompts into a chat window. You were told this by every piece of AI coverage for the last 3 years. The belief is reasonable. Every consumer AI product has been a chat window. ChatGPT is a chat window. Claude AI is a chat window. Gemini is a chat window. If the only interface you have been handed is conversational, of course, mastery looks like being better at typing into that conversation. The professionals quietly multiplying their leverage right now are not typing into chat windows, they are writing one small file named SKILL.md that describes a weekly task of theirs in plain English. Claude Code, Anthropic's command line tool, which runs Claude on your own computer with access to your files, reads that file once, then runs the task for them every time after. Files compound over months, chat sessions vanish at the end of each conversation. The chat window was the starter kit, the file is the game. Zack Shapiro is a Yale law graduate, a former US federal court clerk, and spent his early career at Davis Polk. He now runs a 2-person law firm called Reigns LLP that serves roughly 200 startup and investor clients. 4 years ago, that client load would have needed a 20-lawyer firm. Today, Zack does it with one colleague and 5 SKILL.md files he wrote himself. He did not become a better prompt engineer, he wrote down his judgment. Read that again. That fork has a name. Senior knowledge work roles are converging to a single shape. Orchestrator of skills, the professionals already past the fork are not chatting, they are writing files. That distinction decides who the role gets promoted and who the role gets restructured out inside 18 months. Start with the thing itself. What a skill actually looks like when you open a text editor. A skill is a folder with one file in it called SKILL.md. The file is written in plain English, the same way you would brief an analyst over coffee. You describe the task, the inputs, the output format, and any judgment calls that always apply. When you run one command inside Claude Code, Claude reads that file and executes the task against whatever input you pass it. The closest analogy a senior professional already has is the engagement memo. Every firm has one. It tells a junior how the team approaches a deal, a case, a product decision. Here are the sections, here are the standards, here is the judgment we always apply. The analyst reads the memo and produces output that looks like the firm's work. A SKILL.md is an engagement memo for a single recurring task of yours. You write it once, Claude reads it the same way an analyst would. The analyst runs the memo, Claude runs the SKILL.md. What is new is the throughput. The SKILL.md runs in 90 seconds and it runs on a Sunday night without anyone being in the office. In a few minutes, you will meet 6 professionals across 6 different fields who have already built this inside their own careers. Before I introduce them, 3 mechanisms: why files beat chats, why encoded tasks compound, and why firms quietly prefer the professionals who write them. The first mechanism to see is why files beat chats. When you chat with Claude, you type instructions, wait, read, refine, type again. The session ends and your instructions vanish. Next week, you type most of them again. A skill moves the instructions out of the chat and into a file. That is the entire structural change. The file runs forever, the chat ends in an hour. The second mechanism is why encoded tasks compound. Every time a weekly task of yours becomes a skill, the time you used to spend on it frees up, which is the time you use to encode the next skill. The first skill takes you 15 minutes and saves you maybe 2 hours a week. The second takes 10 minutes and saves another 2. By the 10th, your Sunday night looks different. File writers do not work faster than chat users. They do not work at all on the mechanical layer, because the mechanical layer is now a set of files Claude runs. The third mechanism is why firms quietly prefer file writers for senior roles. A senior role at a consulting firm, a law firm, a product org is supposed to produce leverage, more output per unit of partner time. For 40 years, that has meant hiring associates. Associates are expensive, they take 3 years to train, and the training walks out the door when they leave. A file writer generates the same throughput with fewer associates, and the training stays on your drive, regardless of who joins or leaves. The Anthropic Economic Index from March 2026 puts a number on the substrate beneath this. 49% of US jobs have already had at least a quarter of their tasks performed using Claude. Goldman Sachs put the scale on the other side. 300 million full-time equivalent jobs exposed globally, 44% of legal work automatable. Firms are not automating people out for sport. They are promoting the people who build the files that did the automating, because those people just produced partner-level leverage without the partner-level salary line. That is the whole thing. I want you to meet 6 professionals who crossed this fork inside the last 12 months. Their professions are different. The shape is identical. Sachin Rekhi was head of product for LinkedIn Sales Navigator, which he grew from 0 to $200 million in revenue and 0 to 500 employees. Wharton, UPenn Computer Science, 150 essays on product management over the last decade. Early in 2026, he published a free course at ccforpms.com, Claude Code for Product Managers, and ran a webinar for 1,500 product managers in one sitting. He now runs 13 Claude Code Skills that automate his strategy, design, and execution workflows, synthesizing customer interviews, running his NPS program, critiquing his own strategy docs the way his old VP used to. He reports a 3 times productivity boost on top of the 10 times he already had from AI alone. Corey Haynes was head of growth at Barometrics before founding Swipewell and Marketing Skills. He open-sourced 26 Claude skills on GitHub covering conversion, copy, search, analytics, and growth. One marketer who read his thread replaced an entire weekly reporting stack by chaining 3 of Corey's skills together. The skills are not proprietary. The leverage is in having written them. Alex Banks runs The Signal, a newsletter with 55,000 subscribers. He posted a video of Claude generating a McKinsey quality slide deck in 7 minutes using extended thinking. Tens of thousands of reactions, but the sentence that stuck was his one-line take on the whole shift. Claude, he wrote, is turning into the operating system for knowledge work. The most striking cases of the 6 come at the end. Wait until you see what an ML engineer did when he left Claude Code running autonomously through the night. Brian Ahmed is a professor with 540,000 students across Udemy, Coursera, and Maven, and a PhD and MBA besides. In February, he posted a video of Claude building, auditing, reporting, and presenting a McKinsey-level financial model in about 10 minutes. The same model 6 months earlier took a junior analyst a full day. He now runs commercial finance boot camps at $1,000 a seat, teaching the workflow to working finance professionals. Rakuten is a $17 billion internet and fintech company in Japan. Their finance and accounting team rewrote their monthly close as three chained Claude skills. One extracts data, a second verifies quality, a third generates the report. The close went from 8 hours to about 87.5% faster. The skills are now standard inside the team. The humans spend their recovered hours on judgment calls the skills cannot make. Kenta Narus is an ML engineer at the same company. He left Claude Code running autonomously for 7 hours to refactor a complex method inside a 12.5 million line open source library. It came back with 99.9% numerical accuracy. His broader engineering organization reports time to market dropping from 24 days to 5. Inside enterprise engineering, Claude Code is not a chat assistant, it is a senior engineer who works through the night. 6 professionals, 6 archetypes: legal, product, marketing, consulting, finance education, enterprise engineering. They have nothing in common except that each one of them stopped typing into a chat window and started writing files. The shape is describe work in plain English, encode it as skills, chain the skills. That is the orchestrator role. That is what is converging across every senior knowledge work profession you might name. That is the fork. Before you encode anything, know where this breaks. This approach works when 3 conditions are met. The task recurs at least weekly. You can describe how to do it in plain English, meaning you actually understand the task well enough to brief a junior on it, and the output has a stable shape across runs. A memo, a report, a spreadsheet column, a standard email. It breaks when any of those are absent, a task that is novel every time, a unique client situation, a one-off legal question does not become a skill. A task whose correctness depends on reading a room or on political judgment that cannot be written down doesn't become a skill. Then legal or compliance require a human to sign off on every single instance doesn't become a skill. The common mistake is encoding a task you do not yet fully understand. You will produce a skill that runs but produces bad output. The rule: if you cannot brief an analyst through the task verbally in 5 minutes, you are not ready to write a SKILL.md for it. Fix your own understanding first. Here is what to do tonight. Install Claude Code from Anthropic's site if you have not already. It takes about 10 minutes on any Mac or Windows laptop and requires no coding background. Open a text editor, write a file called SKILL.md. In 10 lines of plain English, describe one task you do every week. A consultant could pick the Sunday night sanity check on a client's pricing model. A lawyer could pick redlining a term sheet against the firm's standard positions. A product manager could pick reconciling the roadmap against the tickets shipped that week. Save the file in a folder on your desktop. Run one command in Claude Code. Compare the output to the one you produced manually last week. It will not be perfect the first time, and that is the point. You now have a file you can refine every Sunday for the rest of your career. Each Sunday, the skill gets sharper and the manual version gets rarer. December 2027 is 18 months away. That is the window. The professional whose role gets restructured spends those 18 months typing into a chat window and getting marginally better at prompts. The professional whose role scales spends the same 18 months writing files and watching their output compound. The difference between them is not talent or tenure, it is 15 minutes tonight. That is the whole game. If you want the one-page playbook I wrote for this exact window, the verification steps, the 6 archetype proof stack, and the 3 action checklist, I put it together as a free resource, link in the description. For the senior professionals building this with me week by week, I run a free community called Agent Skills Academy. That is where members share the one SKILL.md they shipped this week and the one their field still needs. Comment window below and I will send you the Q2 2026 Agent Skills window playbook. That is it. 15 minutes tonight is the decision. The ones who take it are already out of the waiting room.